right. Well, Andrew, we are back.
We are back, and I'll make the joke right now. I don't think Tommy can wow us or impress us any more than he already has. Talking about glufosinate still responding at 2 gallons per acre. So
pack it up and head home. Then
drop the mic.
You know what I keep thinking about is our listeners are made up of people from academia, from industry, students, farmers. I'm trying to picture like Megan Anderson's response, Dean Grossnickel's response. Like I wonder if we're gonna get a call like, what is that guy talking about? Like I'm gonna be excited to hear the response from some of the industry people.
Yeah, I'm sure Megan will give me some grief, so I know her fairly well. So
you know Megan well,
yeah.
So I don't know if you follow her. I think it's my favorite tweet of the year. Do we call them tweets anymore? Is it called a tweet?
That's a good question.
Young people in the room. Do we call it a tweet? It's still called a tweet?
I still call them tweets, even though, yeah.
Do you follow her on X?
I do. It's been a while since I've looked at much, though.
So I love her. She's an awesome agronomist, and she's a great resource. But she was scouting this summer, and she's like this tall, right? And so she's scouting tasseled corn, and we're just coated in southern rust. And so she takes a selfie, and she looked like she went to the same person that does like Donald Trump's tanning. I mean, she's just red as can be. It was awesome. Yeah. So she posted. I think the southern rust is gonna be bad this year.
Yeah.
As our listeners know, I get to introduce the management section. So welcome back. We're back with Dr. Butts. Is that how your students refer to you, or? You go by Tommy?
I mean, I get called a lot of things, probably. So I don't know. It depends on if I'm in the room or not. It would be my guess.
Yeah.
But.
Well,
we'll ask them when you.
We'll ask them when we get them on camera. But no, excited to have you back, and obviously just super appreciative of the science episode. I think both Andrew and I are still trying to digest some of the information you gave to us, but. Yeah, so awesome updates, conversations around the science. What are we doing here, guy? This is the most poorly written. What time did you type this stuff out? Jiminy Christmas. So my reveal for this episode is I am not a cat or a dog person. I prefer rats. I'm sure these two that just walked into the room. So those of you that are watching on camera.
Oh, that's the best. I wish I had.
Two Purdue grad students are sitting in the back of the room and have no idea. They thought they were coming to some sort of an informative podcast.
And actually a learning based podcast.
We're gonna we gotta go.
I wish we would have had a camera on her. That was a good response.
At least you're not wearing a hat, so it's not like it's controlling you, like in Ratatouille or something.
Yeah.
So.
That's a great movie.
Yeah,
that's a good call.
Oh, man. Prefer rats, huh?
Yeah.
Would have never guessed.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well,
we've all got our things, right?
Had some phenomenal conversations with Tommy around just herbicide management and really a lot of really good conversation around how do we handle that beans before corn conversation, and do we need to think about it differently, and he really clarified that for us. As we continue to think about the management piece, I really wanted to dig into some of the. We'll talk weed resistance and herbicides first. What are you seeing across the Corn Belt in terms of weed control issues, whether it's specific active weed species, again target site versus metabolic resistance? What are you seeing in hearing across the Corn Belt?
Yeah. Man, anything and everything, I guess is what I would say, right? So I tend to say I'm about the second most depressing person to listen to talk, right behind an ag economist, right? But so everything you just said, right? We've got we're identifying increasing concerns with target site resistance, with metabolic resistance. Metabolic resistance in particular seems to really
That's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's that it's expanding that much more or our capabilities to detect it and understand it have increased, right? And so we're just identifying it that much more. But yeah, that's increasing. We constantly have some more weed species that are popping up and things like that. So, water hemp generally is still our number one concern across the entire Midwest, right? And different resistances there. The group 5s of concern, the 27s for corn, group 15s in soybeans are starting to become a concern. And then you get into even now the auxins and the glufosinates of the world, there's concerns there, I guess, from quite a few people, right?
Yeah.
Giant ragweed in the Midwest continues to be a big issue of concern. I know, talking to Rodrigo up in Wisconsin, they've had some PPO resistance pop up in those on top of ALS and glyphosate resistance. Horseweed and mare's tail, is still out there causing grief for people. At least in Indiana, a couple of a newer-ish one that's popping up more is I've gotten more calls on Italian ryegrass being an issue.
I was just going to ask, what about grasses?
Yeah.
Italian ryegrass.
So that one I've gotten more phone calls on.
Fabrizio probably brought that over.
Yeah. I'm guessing he probably did.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear this. I can blame it on Fabrizio because everybody likes to blame it on me bringing it from Arkansas.
Right,
so this is good. I've got
Sean's
somebody to blame it on
imaginary
now.
friend.
Yeah, this is great.
You'd be the worst comedian in the world. The audience is supposed to laugh. Yeah. Oh man, you must be. I mean, you must be a glutton for punishment to want to go into weed science, right? I mean, this is a difficult time.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's challenging. I guess it's job security though, right?
Sure.
Like we have more problems constantly pop up, and I guess it is. It does feel rewarding actually when we find some things that can help. So maybe that's a plus side to it a little bit. But yeah, it's there's constantly more things popping up that are more challenging every day almost, it seems like. So
yeah, it gets trickier, and it's weird too. You start talking about how some of it seems like when you start talking about resistance and weed seed specific species, years ago the conversation would always go back to hey, how did the seed get here? Was it in a bag? We have all these cover crops going out. How did it get here? And now it's especially bringing in metabolic resistance. Man, that's super scary. Starting to hear about some of these resistance issues with certain modes of action in weed species.
And with the metabolism one, and there's more and more connections being drawn that lead to the cross resistance thing, right? That we never thought would be connected before. So it's weird how maybe like a group 27 is all of a sudden linked to a whole nother group, and yet because of the metabolism based and various things going on, all of a sudden now you end up with low dose resistance to two different modes. And it's like the more we find out about some of that, like you said, the scarier it is that we're losing more options faster, I guess, is what's crazy about it when it comes to the metabolic side. I'm
going to cut you two nerds off because we're getting back into science. We're supposed to be talking about management. That's my job here. So let's dig in. We want to ask you maybe just some kind of semi-specific questions just to give our listeners kind of some guidance. So timely planted soybeans. Let's
not listen to Sean Castillo here, okay? Let's get away from whatever he's talking about.
Well, we're still in the great debate of the appropriate way to spell it. So you got Sean Conley, you got Sean Castillo, and I'm still convinced I'm right. But,
now none of them are here, so
they can't defend themselves. That's right. So
let's say a lot of bad things about both Conley and Castillo. So Conley from Wisconsin was one of my mentors too, and so if I could say bad things about him and Castillo at the same time, it's great for me. So.
And then we'll figure out if they listen or not. Right? We'll find out if they actually listen to the podcast or not. So, let's say I plant beans on April 10th. I don't believe there's a lot of weeds germinating. What's your recommendation? Do I go pre? Do I go post? What's your recommendation there?
You're killing me because you didn't tell me any weeds that you have in your field historically, and you didn't tell me, what else you got.
I don't see any weeds today.
Yeah. You're a really good farmer. No.
I'd probably call my seed dealer and ask him to go look at it.
So here's the politician's answer. I heard you talking to Dan Quinn earlier too, right? So it depends. It depends highly, right? So a general recommendation I always hate giving for weed control stuff because, if we really want to be the most exact, and if we want to start trying to have really good weed control but be able to still save on the economic side, you have to make more direct selections for things, right? So you want to know what weeds you have as a historical perspective, how bad they are, those kinds of things before you start really giving general recommendations. if we're going to just do, kind of general, here's a rough idea, right? If we're talking the beginning of April, generally that's our main window, at least in Indiana here, where giant ragweed is becoming a problem emerger.
We have that. I mean, that's across a lot across the Corn Belt, right?
Right. Horseweed, mare's tails, and that same thing. Those are like those early emergers, and so those are the ones of concern. And so you want to pick some different herbicides that are a good option there. So, on a residual front, anything that typically has like first rate in it or something like that is some of the best ones for, or the classic side of things is good for knocking out giant ragweed in most cases. There's some grasses that can be early emergers, so generally a group 15 or something still a good option. PPOs maybe, give or take, right? It kind of depends a little bit on what else you might have out there, on how needed those are, but a lot of our premixes, especially in soybeans, have those in it already too. So I think the main thing on that April date is you probably can be less concerned with trying to pick a residual that is specifically targeting water hemp or palmer, right? Because those are probably, depending on the long-term forecast, they're probably not coming until at least mid-May, 6 weeks later. And I would contest then that you want to come back somewhere in between there before you're getting to that point and have an overlapping residual, right, where you can more specifically target than a group 15 for that late water hemp and palmer coming on. So April 10th, you lay out some of those options we just talked about for like the ragweeds, horseweeds of the world, and then you come back hopefully like that second week in May or something, and you hit it with an overlap in residual of pyroxasulfone zidua or the esmetolochlors of the world, that kind of thing.
Tommy, building on what Sean just asked.
Hang on a second.
Go ahead.
I want to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
So when I asked that question, you started to ask filtering questions, right? So weed history, severity. Is there a tool that exists right now? I mean, so I don't know what percentage of it, but the majority of chemistry is sold through an ag retailer, right? And oftentimes it's very much what's in the bulk tank, right? I mean, that's the way the industry is set up. Is there a tool where I can go in and I can make those selections? I can say, okay, here's my history, here's the severity of my history, and it will start to filter some of that for me, because I'm thinking in my mind, you've talked about the importance of sprayer setup, right? Do I have the appropriate nozzles? Am I using the right AI? How's the average farmer supposed to know that?
So that's a great question. I don't know that there's a tool currently developed where you can kind of plug and play a lot of those things in and narrow it down. What I can say though is in most states, and we have our regional weed guide that can get you most of the way there for what you're describing, right? So our weed guide covers Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Missouri. And for every crop, we've got a weed table right up front, right? And we give a whole list of the different herbicides and basically rate, here's these herbicides and their effectiveness on these different weeds. And so to me, that's a really good, effective, low-tech way of going about it, because you just look, okay, here's a couple of my problem weeds that I know I've had, as long as you know the field history. Now, if you don't know field history, that gets real messy and challenging. But if you know field history, at least, okay, here's a couple I've had problems in the past. Go down and find somewhere I'm rated 9s or 8s at least, and okay, let's talk about that herbicide then and see if that's an option.
It seems like there's a real opportunity there. And then when you think about the merging of technology, right, where we're starting to use imagery to identify weeds and historical pressure and that sort of thing, it'd be powerful if somebody.
I agree. That was a good question.
A tool like that was a good question. Thank you.
Very good. You get a star.
But I'm also thinking about in simple tools, whether it's a John Deere Op Center or Climate or whatever, we have agronomists all the time making observations, right? I go out and scout a field. Hey, I made this observation of a weed, insect, or disease pressure. It seems like that wouldn't be that hard to build, and if you could do that across the industry, I think it'd be really powerful.
Yeah, the only main issue, because I know there's been some talks and there's been initial developments, at least that I've been a part of for some of that. It gets more complicated than you would think when you start talking about all the different herbicide options that are available out there, right? And the premixes, and you've got 2 ways and 3 ways and whatever.
And generic,
Yeah, that's when it starts getting kind of tricky to narrow it down a little bit. But there hopefully in the near future there'll be some attempts at least get it partially the way there. The other tool I should mention along these lines too is because I was talking about like early emergers and late emergers and things like that, and we all have some anecdotal, observations on that stuff too. But there has been some work trying to develop a tool too to kind of show, based on like growing degree days, just like we talk about with corn and soybeans, on here's when optimum windows are happening for various weeds too. And so there's a handful of tools out there. Indiana specifically released one just last year, Purdue, where it was water hemp and giant ragweed. And so based on temperatures and growing degree days across the state, it'll actually tell you, okay, here's when you should probably expect first emergence, here's when peak emergence is probably going to be, and then here's when you start tailing off. And so that's a really good tool to kind of work in then with like the weed guy, because okay, well, I know I'm probably starting to hit my my peak emergence on giant ragweed. My peak emergence on water hemp is still 500 growing degree days away, right?
Yeah.
You can kind of start mapping it out. So that's a pretty cool little tool too, that's available through I think our climate office at Purdue that we have.
Building on Sean's previous question, talking about different weed species and the different actives that are have efficacy on them. Digging into some of this soybean by planting date conversation, one of the things I struggle with, and we could probably get pretty nerdy with this, but it's part of the management. With nitrogen, you always, here's the risk putting all your nitrogen on the fall, right? You have a lot of rain, there's the potential for denitrification and leaching. With herbicides, you have all these, water solubility, different products, activation under dry conditions, and then you have water solubility. You can potentially leach some of that active and dilute the active so that it's not as, the efficacy goes down. Do you think we need to be getting to the point where we have these premixes, where we have more of a conversation around, hey, if we're dry, again, because Mother Nature, man, the weather's been so variable, do we need to have an active where one is more or less water soluble so we can have all those situations covered?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and we've tried to get down this path a little bit more in recent years. And so a couple examples I can talk about on this front. We actually did a project this last year trying to look at like timing for overlapping residuals and whether it's better to put asmetolochlor or pyroxasulfone in that overlapping residual for that exact point. Asmetolochlor generally requires a lot more water than what pyroxasulfone does. And generally speaking, kind of not a final result, but what it kind of looked like was, if you can put that pyroxasulfone when it's a little bit drier, you'll get it activated and you'll get more activity than that asmetolochlor that'll just sit there and basically get not activated at all, right? So what I've kind of said is some of this earlier planting stuff, maybe you put your asmetolochlor first when you have a higher chance of getting that rainfall. You follow with the pyroxasulfone and you're overlapping when you have a higher chance of it being dry, right? In Arkansas, we actually also played this game quite often and saw really good results was with actually dicamba. Dicamba has a pretty decent little residual on it when it's dry for pigweeds. And so we'd say put it in your pre-emergence application at that point if you're in dicamba beans or whatever, and then mix it with your other residuals. And basically you're just hedging your bets, right? If you're dry, your dicamba's working. Hopefully within a 10-day period, you finally do catch a rain. That shuts the dicamba off and turns on your other residuals. And boom, then that takes over. We saw some really good results with that at times. And so, there's various games, I guess, that could be played there with some different actives and stuff.
So thinking about moving into the drone management conversation, let's start with talking about some gallons. That's good. I mean, that's I know I'm going to go re-listen to that because that's something I struggle when I start talking, herbicides, pre's, post with growers, because across the Corn Belt here in Iowa, we typically, our rain typically shuts off, at some point on a normal year, not 2025.
Well, so
it's a legit question.
We had some historical data that I pulled for here in Indiana, and it's that same way. It's actually like up until mid-May, you have about a 60% chance of getting a half an inch of rain within 7 days. From mid-May to mid-June, it's a whole month time period in there, it drops to under a 50% chance of getting that rain. It's a coin toss. And so we saw that from 20 years worth of historical climate data that we see that very consistent pattern emerge. Yeah,
that's something to think about as we get more prescriptive and tailored with our active conversations and our premixes. So that'll be good. Moving into the drone conversation, what can you tell us about the research looking at the gallons per acre a grower should be using when we're talking drone applications and herbicides?
Yeah, guess I don't know that it matters. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's not get tomatoes.
0.05 gallons per acre.
Let's not get tomatoes thrown at us, right? Okay, no. So what I can tell you is we've done research basically at 2, 3, 5, and then comparing it to standard ground rigs that are 10 and 15. In almost all of our research, we really haven't seen where we've lost control even at 2 GPA, right? Even with things like glufosinate, Liberty, paraquat, stuff like that. Generally speaking, what I've told some folks is I at least like to see 3. I think there is, we've, not that it's been statistical, but we have seen a trend where if you can get to 3, you will see somewhat of a step up as far as the spray volume goes out of a drone. And so 3 is kind of where I like to set my bottom. We've seen where if you go to 5, you maybe can increase the speed of some activity, but at the end of the day, you normally get the same level of control if you're at 3 or 5, either way. And all of that's been comparable to 10 or 15 out of a ground rig, which is still crazy to me too, but it's across multiple studies now at this point. So that's kind of where I've generally landed, is at least if you can get me, 3 is where I like to be because I think it hedges a little bit of risk, but we've still seen really good control out of it on those drones.
Does the active ingredient in your research make a difference, or is that, you mentioned glufosinate, so across all actives, are we?
From across all the actives that we've tested, it hasn't mattered, and so that includes glufosinate, glyphosate, paraquat. We this summer we did some residuals out of our drones. So Acuron we actually sprayed, Sonic we actually sprayed in soybeans. And it hasn't mattered in those cases.
That's crazy.
So, so we'll see, But yeah, as of now, it hasn't mattered with any.
I think we're going to talk about this for 7 hours on the drive home and not actually believe you. I mean, I'm blown away by that.
Yeah.
How can I think 2025 exposed a lot of people trusting the manufacturer's swath a little bit too much, maybe going a little bit faster than they should be. So we're learning speed really impacts coverage and swath on a drone with a fungicide. Looking at herbicide applications, what is your concern with that, and how can growers reduce the amount of potential streaking when we're thinking herbicide pre's and maybe post at some point?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll be honest, I don't have a great answer that satisfies all the requirements for every application, right? Like when we were talking about ground rigs earlier, and I'm talking about actives and being more precise and selective and all of these things, right? When it comes to drones, we just don't have enough information across the board to be that selective. And so generally what my recommendation has been to guys is, if you're just starting out, do some testing in advance, right? Do some sort of pattern testing, however you want to do it before you're spraying thousands of acres. But figure out what your swath is. And you mentioned it, right? It is not what the manufacturer says it is.
Yeah.
The manufacturer
That's
gives
a given.
Yes, the manufacturer gives you the absolute maximum that you can maybe get 1 out of 100 times, and the other 99 times you're not going to get that.
Maybe if the wind's blowing that direction.
Yes. And so you for sure got to kind of do a pattern testing and get it narrowed down to what that swath is. But then what I've kind of told people, just because we don't have enough information to figure it all out, is do that pattern testing and figure out a rough setup that you can kind of do across the board, and keep as many things constant as you can then for all your drone applications. So get a flight speed that works for you, get a flight height that works for you, get an adjuvant package that seems to work for you, pick a droplet size that seems to work for you, right? Whether you want to do a coarse or a finer spray or whatever, right? But get a setup, pattern test it, and then basically try and keep that set up for most of your applications. And maybe you do 2 pattern tests and you get 2 different setups, right? But right now, because we just don't have enough information, that's about the best thing I can come up with to minimize as much variation as possible.
Tommy, can you give us, I know we have a lot of growers, man, you got the T40, T50, all these different drones, and it seems like you hear a lot of 25 to 35 foot swath recommendation from the manufacturer. You mentioned it earlier. It seems like the second we start getting an idea for where everything should be, we get new technology, new drones that come out. If a grower were wanting to start, whether it's a fungicide or herbicide, do you have a recommended swath that you feel like is safe? Again, we don't know the drones, but I feel like for the most part, it should probably be around half of, give or take, what the manufacturer should be. Do you have a rough swath that they should start it?
Well, like you said, it depends on everything, so it's a little bit challenging just to do that. Let's say it's the T40 or T50 though from DJI, because those tend to be the most popular by far on the marketplace. Like you said, I think the manufacturer says it can do 36 to 40 feet or something. Most guys I've talked to, once they figure it out, they're more down somewhere between a 25 to a 30-foot swath. So, what is that, like a 60 to 70% or something of what the manufacturer total is? Somewhere around in there, maybe. And again, I think this will change depending on other drones, so don't take that number as let's apply that to all the drones. But for the T40, T50, that's generally what I've heard is somewhere in that range. Now, again, though, that is typically kind of a set flight height of 12 to 15 feet. Max flight speed, because everybody's trying to max their flight speed. Right? They're going as fast as they can. But and then it very depends on the droplet size. And I don't know if there's a standard droplet size that guys are using out there. We've seen if you have a finer spray, though, it's going to spread your swath out more, and you have higher drift potential, obviously. Yeah. If you go to a coarser spray, it tends to get funneled more into the center, so you'll have a narrower swath, but you have less drift potential out of that. And so I try and tell folks to figure out the balance there and however it works for them. In my experience, I've liked the coarser spray, even though it cuts my swath down, but I'm also not going for max efficiency, right? I'm trying to get as consistent and optimized of an application as possible, and I think we can do that with a coarser spray versus the finer spray. But the guys that are trying to maximize efficiency and maybe cover up some mistakes that you might see if you don't have your swath exactly right, they can cover up some mistakes with that finer spray when they're spreading it out some more.
An observation I had from this year with watching the drones was, and this goes back to maybe we don't fully understand, and as our chemistry changes, the importance of that, like rotor wash, or I don't know what term you would use there. But I know when we were watching that and we were just messing around with different heights and stuff, it's interesting because, obviously right underneath that drone, you're really pushing that chemistry into the canopy. Well, you go out to those wings where you're getting that wash, and you have, you have penetration off one side, but then you also have the reverse where it's actually lifting that chemistry back up.
It's like recirculating.
And so it's, to me, the thing that I kind of wonder is where we probably saw maybe some applications of fungicide that looked really streaky. Well, I wonder if we're getting really good canopy penetration right underneath of the drone. And so even though it's getting distributed out to that, the 13 and 14 feet that way and 13 and 14 feet that way, is it just not penetrating, at the same level?
Well, and this goes back to a conversation we had earlier too, but when you're talking the fungicides, that's probably going to cut down your swath more too, because you got tasseled corn, it's got a whole lot of plant material to catch more droplets sooner than when we're making herbicide applications, and it can spread out further, right? And so there you might have to cut it down even further to maybe 20 to 25 feet rather than the 25 to 30 feet. So I think that's probably also playing a role in it too. And the speed thing is a big thing too, with some of that vortex effect and stuff too, because when those drones tilt up, they kick it out, right? And they cause more of that vortex. If they can get up to speed and they level off, then you see less of that vortex effect typically, because it's actually forcing the spray down. So speed plays a major role in all of that too, and whether it's still speeding up or whether it's actually at max speed.
Yeah, that's been the one interesting thing as we're talking about fungicide specifically, dealing in tassel corn. At first, obviously, we knew the swath would be something we'd have to look at, right? The overlapping, where's that fine line between what's too wide, what's too narrow, and then the overlap potentially. What we continue to learn is speed really impacts. Speed really impacts that fungicide coverage, and so maybe the difference with bare ground, you don't have to worry about that, right? Because it doesn't matter, if you get down into that canopy. But speed with fungicides, I know speed's starting to matter a lot more than what we initially thought. So yeah. Tommy, if a grower or a consultant were wanting to think about trying a herbicide application with a drone, what's the easiest way and probably the one with the least amount of potential error? Where would you recommend them start?
That's a great question. I guess it depends on if they want to get in it themselves and applying, or whether they want to hire somebody out. I would generally say if they want to just before they jump in full sail, buy a drone and try and do it all themselves, I would try and hire somebody just to get a feel for it, right? And maybe go along with them while they're spraying and see how it all works. And the main thing I'd like to tell folks there starting off is make sure to ask the questions and find somebody that's legal, right? They've gone through, they have all their pesticide applicators test pass, they have their Part 107, they've gotten their 137, they've registered their drone, and also that they're insured, because you don't want to hire somebody that's not insured, and that's a big deal going on right now. And so that's kind of where I tell people to start, is make sure you find somebody that's done their due diligence and done all of that, because those people too are generally the ones in my experience that care
a little bit more.
Exactly. And so they're going to do a better job, or they're trying to do a better job because they've already gone through all of that process. And so I think, to me, that's the best starting point. And then they're a good person to learn from if you want to jump into it after that.
Would you recommend starting with a pre versus a post? And then is there a specific pre that you, I mean, is there one easier than the other?
Yeah.
Or, I mean,
you know, I not that I've thought about yet, I guess, that seems to me like one would be a better starting point than another. You know, it might be a good idea if you're just trying to navigate for a real initial start is to make it a less critical application, right? So maybe it's you have some late season grass escapes and you're considering a Roundup application or something to knock out some grasses, right? So it's not going to be a massive deal if you have misses, but you can kind of figure some things out. Maybe it's a cleanup. We were talking about burr cucumber earlier, right? Well, if you leave some streaks with that, it's not the end of the world. You'll still be able to get the combine through it in a pre-harvest, but if you can knock out the majority of it and learn some things, boom, maybe that's an opportunity, right? I think maybe that's where I would really start if I was just dipping my toe in, is try and do it in a less risky situation than if I'm trying to do a pre and I streak a field, all of a sudden now I've got all these streaks I got to get under control in a hurry, right? Or if it's my real critical post timing and I'm trying to knock out all my water hemp and palmer and I streak a field, man, that's ugly, right? So try and pick, if you're just dipping your toe in, pick a situation where you know it's a little bit less of a major concern.
Yeah, that's good advice.
If I'm hesitant, what advice would you give me? Well, I definitely am. Yeah.
I think I'm going to recommend Sean go out and spray glufosinate next year.
Yeah. 2 gallons.
It'll work. I'm telling you, it's weird. It's crazy, but it does. No, I mean, I think it's fair to be hesitant and to be questioning, you know, some of that stuff. It goes against everything as a weed scientist I've ever been trained and ever talked about until the past year or two, right?
Everything you learned.
And so no, I'm completely on board. I would gladly, I think, question it and be hesitant about it. But I guess what I would say is I wouldn't let that stop me from exploring it, right? And again, so kind of like we just talked about, pick a situation, you know, maybe a field that's a nightmare to get into. All right, well, let's try it on this field, right? Let's see what happens. I got to get some grass cleaned up randomly. Let's try it with a shot of Roundup and see what happens, right? It's a less critical situation than trying to get palmer and water hemp under control. So, you know, if you're hesitant, just dip your toe in some less stressful part of that situation, and then you can kind of see for yourself and go from there.
I think often about drones, thinking back to the conversation we had around soil health and soil compaction. I'm blanking on his name right now. Ohio State. Fulton?
John Fulton.
Yeah.
Yep, Dr. John Fulton from Ohio State. Ohio State.
He made a comment that really resonated with me, that one of the most forgotten or not talked about yield limiting factors is compaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when he said that, it really resonated, especially, you know, high organic matter glacial soils where it's really hard to keep the balance of oxygen and water. And then we go out and we run a massive sprayer across them, right? You know, 4 or 5 times a year. Yep. That was like the first day, I think, for me. I was like, okay, maybe we really do need to be thinking about this drone thing, because over time, what does that potentially do to our soil health if we can keep some of those passes off? You know, to your point, I don't know that I see it in the immediate future replacing a bunch of 120-foot booms. I'm not sure we're there yet.
And I don't know that we'll ever be there, right? I think there's a place for the 120-foot ground rig booms, and even the plains and parts of the country, like, they have their place. They're not going away at all, I don't see. But I think there's... Yeah,
we use helicopters to do a lot of our fungicide right now, you know, and we can do 4,500 acres in a day, right? Yes. I mean, and these, at least the current technology, you guys lucky to get a couple hundred done with the drone. So, but I guess, you know, a decade from now, as we're able to link these things and they get bigger in the capacity,
battery life,
all
that stuff.
I mean, it's
I mean, you're already seeing drones with booms on them.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's drones with, I don't know what they are, 10-foot booms, so that just widens your pattern, right?
Right.
I mean, look at the advancements, the battery life in the T40 versus T50, man. It's these little in just a year, right? So it's crazy to think even
the technology is going to be, it's going to get here. It's just, you know.
I remember 3 or 4 years ago at the Power Show in Des Moines, they had a helicopter. It wasn't a drone size. It was like the size of one of these tables, and man, if it had probably a 7-foot blade on it.
Yep.
And man, if you had an accident with that, it wouldn't just cut your finger off; it'd take your head off. But again, it was gas powered too.
Yep.
And so little things like that as the price goes down in technology, man, you know, you think you could do a 40-foot swath with something like that potentially. So I think, you know, I think these drones are really going to unlock, you know, all these biologicals. Clearly going to unlock some you know, the access piece under wet conditions with the drone, you know, for herbicide applications. So I think the technology is going to continue to develop, and I bet there's ways that we think are silly now that we'll be using drones here in the next few years.
Well, I'm fascinated by the idea when we were talking to Dan Quinn about just how to improve grain fill, how to extend grain fill, make sure we're converting to weight, and there's been several different products talked about, but different hormones and seaweed extract, and you know, all these different ways we can manipulate the physiology of the plant. But all that stuff requires access, right? And especially when you get later into the growing season, where, you know, to your point, you're probably not going out there and driving around and senescing corn with a ground rig unless you absolutely have to. The damage. So I think that's exciting. I guess I'd be curious, just your perspective sitting here today. Maybe think short term, 3 to 5 years. Where do you see this technology going?
Yeah, I like you said, it's just crazy how in 1 year this stuff changes so quickly. So in 3 to 5 years, man, I don't even know I could predict how far it's going to go, right? Like either in size, carrying capacity, speeds. I know one of the latest ones coming out is traveling up to 45 miles an hour now in the air, right? Like it's amazing where they're going. My hope, I guess, maybe that's the way to answer this question is my hope in these 3 to 5 years is we can figure the consistency and thing out across the board and have some better general recommendations that here's how you figure out your swath very easily this way, right? Yep, they can be effective, but here's how you can make them more consistent across the board. So I guess that would be my hope more than anything, because again, I think they have a fit for these different scenarios, and who knows if the FAA opens up the drone swarming even more. Who knows where that'll go if you got 3 or 5 or 10 all going across the field at once. Holy cow, right? Which that scares me a lot too. I mean, I don't know if I want 10 drones all in the field all at the same time trying to talk and coordinate and everything else.
What could possibly go wrong?
It reminds me of those cool things they're doing with those mini drones, right? They're making those gigantic
light shows
in the sky, man. Picture if you could buy a bunch of those and each one carries even if it's a half a gallon. I mean, how quick could you do a field? You know what I mean? So it's crazy to think where it's going to go.
Right. I know. We just one anecdotal experience, but we sprayed 5 gallons out of a drone this summer. We were trialing a product. That is exhausting.
Yes.
I mean, it is as fast as that stupid thing flies away and flies back. You're refueling it. You're popping batteries. You're cooling batteries. I mean, I would much prefer to sit in my Hagee rather than sweat on the side of a 100-degree soybean field, refueling that thing. But
Tommy, I got one final question for you before Sean.
Do?
Yeah, I do. Before Sean has his phenomenal wrap.
No,
it just popped in my head. One of the most important things I think we're gonna have to get growers used to, and I would be curious your opinion. You know, we got some new actives coming out, coming down in the pipeline to control some specific weeds. We got older actives. You know, you mentioned, I mean, Zidua Pro. I mean, it has it can be so hot and impact soybeans, but at the same time, it's one of the best products on the market in terms of efficacy for weed control. How would you recommend, as we continue to have some of these hotter products that are really good on weed control, but they might leave some sort of physical damage, symptomology on the corn or soybean leaf? How do you advise growers to think about that? What's the give and take?
So my advice is always go take a 2-week vacation. Go to the lake, go to the beach, go to do something else, right?
Stop looking at it.
Yeah, stop looking at it. That's always the number one thing. We talked about it a little earlier too. This year especially was a problematic year because it was cool and wet for so long in Indiana. So we had a lot of PPO injury in soybeans and metribuzin injury in soybeans and stuff like that. But in almost all of our research, that damage is not yield limiting. Maybe it affects canopy development slightly, right, for a little bit of time there, but the weed management that we get out of that greatly trumps everything else. And so you want to focus on that we are knocking out a whole bunch of those weeds. And yeah, the crop looks ugly for, you know, a couple weeks or something, but after that it grows out of it and takes off from there, and we're in so much better shape. And, you know, going back to the economics again, almost all of our research shows if you have that consistent, you know, highly efficacious residuals in the tank, it'll normally save you, you know, a post application at some point that we're not revenge spraying. And a lot of the times those posts can be a little bit less consistent, right? We have some more escapes, or we, you know, they regrow or something else, and we don't have that as much with the residuals. So again, I try and tell everybody, listen, yeah, we might have a little bit of crop injury, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. We know our herbicides working, the crop's going to grow out of it. Let it ride.
We need to add revenge spraying to our list of like key takeaways. So Megan Anderson was on the show one time, and she referenced RTS, I think. Recreational, restless tillage syndrome. So that was we're gonna start making T-shirts of all the good sayings that come out of this. But I revealed something about myself to you. Yeah. So now it's your turn.
This sounds dangerous.
Yeah, our favorite question to ask our guests at the end is just as you think about the impact that you've had in agriculture to this point in your career. What's something that you're really proud of the work that you've done and the team that you have?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you know, it makes me feel old, I guess. That, you know, what have I accomplished in my career?
You're in the curmudgeon group with us.
Yeah,
the old curmudgeon.
Your beard has a lot more black in it than Steele's does.
You know, I don't know that I have, you know, one thing that necessarily comes into mind in particular. I think in general, just being able to have as many conversations about the spray applications, having that background and being able to talk about pulsing sprayers and setting those up more appropriately and helping as many folks that have purchased some of those and had no idea how to set it up and get that more down the right path. And now talking more about nozzle selection and the importance of a lot of that, I think some of that has been, at least for me, it feels like the most impactful, because I know it's been a direct thing where we've improved a lot of different acres that have gotten sprayed, right? And when I was in Arkansas, I got to do a lot of the aerial application work with pilots down there and do some things to improve their operations, and now with drones. And so I think just in general, being able to work all-encompassing on those applications, we've talked about all the complicated factors and how little we've focused on applications in the past. I think that's been a real cool thing that I've gotten to be a part of, and hopefully I can make some more headway moving forward too to get us going in the right direction on that front.
Yeah. It's a great answer, because I think that, you know, in so many other areas of agriculture, we're able to kind of manufacture the next solution for the problem, right? Especially you think about all the traits and things like that we've been able to integrate. There's not a lot coming, right? I mean, we have the system we have primarily. There's a couple pieces of technology coming, but we're going to have to get a heck of a lot better. And so the work you're doing is incredibly important, right? Because I don't think the next Roundup's right around the corner, right? Yeah. I mean, we don't have a savior coming in that way. So really appreciate that.
Yeah. Make sure to tell the graduate students and make sure to tell the folks at Purdue how important I am. That's always good to hear. So
we'll drop them a note. Our show is called A Penny for Your Thoughts. Our joke lately has been, if we knew we actually were going to have people listening, we would have come up with a better name.
A much less stupid name for the show.
Yeah, but I would like to cash in my penny. Andrew, give me your succinct takeaways. And your responsibility is to be highly critical if Andrew paid attention or not. So.
If I'm wrong, don't hesitate to tell me I'm wrong. No, this was phenomenal. You know, I always enjoy talking about herbicides and application technology. And it's pretty cool to see how these worlds are merging. And man, did I learn a lot quick, especially, I mean, we'll get into this with some of my key takeaways. The first one, obviously, is man, it sounds like Tommy is a believer in how we can use drones for herbicide applications. I mean, obviously, what stood out is he was able to have glufosinate have efficacy on weed control at 2 gallons per acre. So, you know, we'll have to sit back and think about that one. But man, you got research and data to back it up. So, you know, whether it's this year or next year, I bet we have growers trying that a lot more. You know, especially with that when you got bare ground, and maybe if it's too wet, you know, it's really going to open the door for some using drones for herbicide applications. The second one, the big conversation is we have across the Corn Belt, Indiana, we have a lot of growers planting soybeans before corn, and there's a lot of concern, questions around, do I need to change up my herbicide program? Do I need to change up my and does that need to become an early post? And so, I think the best recommendation I think I've got yet, regarding that subject is be wary and understand the weeds that you're going to be targeting, the weeds that will be emerging in April versus May. A lot of our problem weeds don't come up until it's warmer, until we get into that, that May time frame, right? Maybe even June time frame, depending on what the weed species is. So, you mentioned that Missouri has a really good resource just for drone approved actives. But when we're talking about soybeans specifically, just understand the weeds that will be coming up potentially in your area and start targeting actives and residuals that will manage those weeds. I think that's really good advice. The third one is, I think one of my key takeaways from a 30,000-foot view is be open to this drone technology, right? I think whether or not we believe in it, whether or not we want this to be a part of agriculture, if there's one area where I would have said of all the areas is probably the least, where we'll use drones the least, it would have been herbicide applications. And man, if we can get glufosinate to work, I feel like the possibilities are limitless. And so I think one of the things is just be open to this, because it's technology that's going to be around, and we're going to refine this. We're going to refine our recommendations, and it's only going to be there to help, get the day-to-day done. My final one is, it's kind of two parts. I think as weed control becomes harder and harder, we're going to have to get used to some of these symptomologies with these pre's that are a little bit hot. Yeah. And so I like your idea, go to the beach, get that pre put down. When that plant starts coming up, go to the beach. A little symptomology, that just means the herbicide's working, right? And so finally, to kind of tie into that, overlapping residuals, you touched on it. I think that's one of the best things that, you mentioned the second that weed comes up out of the ground, it just becomes that much harder to control. So the fact that we need to get much better at truly overlapping residuals and preventing weeds from becoming, a foliar problem, it just makes weed control, long-term weed resistance, long-term, the efficacy of these actives that much better, easier to control, reduce our chance for resistance. So, yeah. How was that?
Good. I think I only have one clarification that I better make.
Yes.
Build on it.
No, yeah. So read labels, okay? Read to the camera. One shot.
We're gonna
labels. Okay?
Our marketing team is gonna love that you did that.
So because I want to clarify, we said the drones we have research exemptions to do things, and so we're talking about glufosinate at 2 GPA. It works. That's also not on label, right?
Yeah.
And so I do want to make that very clear when we start making this commercial applications. And
I'm glad you clarified that, so we aren't out running around.
Yeah. Right. So I did want to say that, right? Read those labels, make sure we're following.
Well, they got in trouble.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to get phone calls.
They're in Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah. But so we can make these things work, and maybe down the road here we'll have some drone-specific labels and stuff. But yeah, as of right now, follow the label, follow the aerial application requirements, whatever that is, and yeah, go from there. So that was my only thing. Everything else was great.
Love it. Well said.
That's good. That's really good. Want to say again, thank you. It's really a privilege, I think, for us to get to do this stuff, to get to hear from you guys, the hard work that goes into understanding these things for us, and then we get to go encourage people to just think differently and adopt new ideas. It's not possible without you leading a team of people and awesome people that are helping you do that work. And so I know on behalf of our listeners, it's just we really want to make sure that you guys understand how much we appreciate that, because we literally take this stuff and make different recommendations in the field because of the work you guys are doing, and that's significant, and so we're greatly appreciative of that.
No, I appreciate y'all having us on as well, and I just want to say thank you too to our whole Purdue Weed Science team, right? Like the whole team included, and Dr. Brian Young's lab, and Bill Johnson, and Steve Myers on the Hort side, even too. The whole Weed Science group at Purdue. We have a really good team that covers a lot of bases, which is great.
Oh yeah, man! You mentioned Bill Johnson, man. He's a sharp guy.
Yes,
he was on our podcast a long time ago, and
I'm not going to buy a Boilermaker shirt, but I will say the time we've spent here at the Ag College, we use the term horsepower. I think, in a previous episode. But I mean, this is an impressive group of people. And the neat part is all of the overlap, right? So I mean, you're working in your craft, but the overlap of having great minds near each other is really powerful. And so, just really appreciate that, Andrew. We'll sign off, but give our guests a teaser about where we're going next.
Yeah, it'll be fun because I don't know if we have we got so many episodes recorded here. I don't know if we know where the next professor in university we're going is, but I do know that we got a fun podcast with a bunch of grad students coming up.
That's right.
And so our new episode that we're going to start working on with all these professors that we work with, you know, their grad students are the ones doing the research, and so. This whole Ask a Grad Student episode thing that I think we're going to build on, I'm excited about. I mean, ever since we interviewed those grad students at Illinois in Velo's lab and Connor's lab, man, they're so sharp that they're doing the future. You know, all the stuff that we'll be talking about in the next 2 to 5 years. I mean, they're doing the research now, so I'm really looking forward to that episode.
It'll be good. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Tommy.